Hello there, YouTube. Devin here again, and today I have some cool stuff to show you, as per usual. As I hope that most of you find that a lot of the stuff that I show you is cool, because I think it's cool. So I'm gonna say it's cool, even though you might not think it's cool. But I suspect most of you will think this is pretty cool. So I'm going to show you a couple different little firearms here and some accessories with them. So accessories that I really look for after I buy a firearm. There's kind of the big two that I really want to look for, but there's quite a few things afterwards after that can come a little bit later down the line that I really think needs some attention. So the first thing I'm going to show you here is that is the Ross rifle. This is the 1910 style Ross rifle. Sorry, I had to look over there. I don't want to put a hole through my wall. So this is the 1910 Ross. This is my beautiful original pre-World War I condition Ross rifle. So it is a fantastically smooth straight pull action. This one has all matching parts, original stock to pre-World War I. The barrel is not shot out. Most of the Rosses that you find, the barrel is going to be really shot out. This has almost 100% rifling, which is next to impossible to find, and it doesn't have the post-war rivet put in the into the slide here, the bolt sleeve. That's the name of it, the bolt sleeve, that allows the bolt to be assembled only correctly. So this one can still be assembled incorrectly, which is something that makes the value of this rifle go up even more, considering it is all matching in 100% original configuration to pre-war specifications, and that war being World War I, and it still has most of the rifling and no update, so as well as most of the original finish, and you could even see the beautiful case hardening marks there on the receiver and the bolt sleeve still. So obviously, since the last time you guys have seen this rifle, I have since made a sling for it with my awesome leatherworking skills. This is not actually the correct sling to this rifle, but it is probably one of the better slings, and there is pictures you can find of this rifle used with this exact sling. This is an American 1907 pattern sling, favored with marksmen and snipers through the Vietnam War, actually. Now, the reason this sling is so favored with marksmen and snipers is the fact that it is highly configurable, very durable, and made of very thick leather. The reason it took so long for me to make is I had to get the right thickness of leather, and now this one's probably actually thicker than most of the original 1907 pattern slings that you will find, and I had to wait for the brass hardware to show up, and all that stuff, and it's got hand-hammered coppered rivets by me, but I had to wait for the brass hardware to show up, and then had to take measurements off of an original to make sure all these holes were in the correct positions and stuff like that. And it ended up being a fantastic job. So the first thing that I look for after I buy a rifle is the sling. Gotta have one. So it makes managing the rifle so much easier, and it makes shooting the rifle so much easier. And then the next thing that I normally buy with the rifle is, if it takes them, is the clips. Having the clips for reloading the rifle is fantastic. It not only makes reloading the rifle cooler and faster, and it's a neat piece of history, but it also makes, some firearms won't work without the clips. The Ross does, but say you get something like a Mannlicher M95 or a Carcano or something like that. Those take clips in order to work. So clips are a good thing to have, but these and both the rifles that I'm going to show you in this video in this case don't need them to work, but they're cool to have. So, and then the next part is basically just for display purposes, and that would be the bayonet. For all military surplus firearms that can take a bayonet, I like to find a bayonet for them. In this case, the bayonet that for this Ross was probably like a tenth of the cost of the rifle, which kind of sucks because some bayonets are getting really, really expensive. So, but I got one, and it's cool to have with the rifle. It's a neat display piece, no edge on it, so I can't hurt myself, which is kind of nice. Or any of my friends don't accidentally hurt themselves, because I'd feel pretty rough about that. And also, I don't want to damage the original finish on this bayonet as well. So it's just a neat piece of history to have when you're hanging the rifle up, if you have the sling and you have the bayonet with it. So that's kind of the big three that I look for. Obviously, you can get ammo pouches, but a lot of these rifles span multiple eras, and ammo pouches can change. So, but I have a big affinity to World War I, and original ammo pouches for the Ross don't really exist. So you can get reproductions, but they don't really exist. They're kind of very, very hard to find and super expensive, almost as much as the rifle itself. So the next rifle I'm going to show you is kind of the same thing, but instead of doing World War I did kind of the World War II theme with it. So, also here's the original sheath for the Ross bayonet, the 1910 bayonet. So, so this is a rifle you've also seen before on the channel. This is my World War II updated P14. It has the marksman's sling on it. You could tell by all of these little nubs. Other than that, it's basically a Bren gun sling. The reason the slings were made longer for the marksman is because they like to wrap them around their forearms for stability purposes. And the little nubs that are sewn onto these slings make them harder to adjust. So with standard rifle slings, they don't have these little stops sewn in them. So what they do is they keep the sling from adjusting past whatever point you put the little C-clamp. So these little nubs keep that from adjusting, so you can keep proper tension on your forearm when you wrap your arm around the sling. And also the added length helps you do that. So it ends up being really hard to do with an original pattern sling because they tend to adjust if you tug on them hard enough, whereas these little things stitched on here prevent that from happening. So this has a marksman type sling on them, which is fitting for the very complicated sights that these have, for very fine adjustment. And I have target sights coming for this as well. And that was the first thing that I bought for this rifle, actually, after I bought the rifle, was the sling for it. So, and I've got a couple different slings for this if I want to do different eras, so, with it. But the second thing that I bought was the 1913 pattern sword bayonet. Now, what makes this rifle incredibly rare is the fact that it is a Winchester. Now, Winchester made less than 300,000 P14s, and they made P14 bayonets. So this is a Winchester pattern 14 bayonet original to a Winchester pattern 14 rifle. Now, the pattern 13 bayonets they made more of those than the rifles, so not as hard to find, but they're still more expensive because they say Winchester than the other two companies that made them, so Eddystone and Remington. So even though both of those are Remington, I'm just going off of what everyone else says. Remington Eddystone was still Remington, and then Remington is Remington. So technically, only Remington and Winchester made pattern 14s. So, but the most common parts are Eddystone parts. So Winchester parts are kind of harder to find because they made the smallest numbers of everything. But the Winchesters were often made, I wouldn't say to a higher quality, but they were often more accurate. They didn't have as many, not that any of them are bad rifles because they're all exceptional rifles, but the Winchester tended to be just a bit better than the Remington ones. So they're fantastic, but they're hard to find, so you're going to pay money for Winchester parts. And Winchester parts are the hardest to find because they didn't make very many of them. So especially for the pattern 14, because they made way less pattern 14s than they made pattern 17s. Now, pattern 14s didn't have interchangeable parts between the companies, whereas the 1917s did, so it's not that big of a deal to find parts for a 1917, but finding pattern 14 parts are hard. So finding this original bayonet for this rifle and getting the right nose cap for it and everything was kind of a lot of work to do, but I ended up doing it. So here you see a pattern 14 Whedon Repair Standard rifle with a Winchester bayonet. A Winchester Whedon Repair Standard with a Winchester 18-inch blade sword pattern bayonet, which really hard to find, but I did it. So I just thought you guys would like to think that this stuff was cool. It wasn't really, this isn't really a history video, more just showing you some cool stuff, and maybe some other things that we will, you'll see reappear later, and if you have any questions or anything to ask about them, I'd be more than happy to answer those in the comments. I don't know where to find parts for these rifles, unfortunately, because a lot of you guys live in different countries and stuff, and it's just going to be hard. So don't ask me where you could find parts for any of these. You're just going to have to look around, because both these rifles are over 100 years old and parts are nearly non-existent for them. So, and you're going to have to pay. But if you have any cool questions about the history or any technical specs or anything on either of these two rifles, I would be more than happy to answer those in the comments. So, and this is the sheath, the original Winchester steel and leather sheath for the pattern 13 bayonet. So there you go. But something simple, something quick to show you, because I've been so terrible about making videos, because with this new job and stuff and some other stuff going on here, it's just been really hard to find time to make videos. So, because videos take time to do, unfortunately, and they take money to do, unfortunately. So, but all's well that ends well, and I'm hoping you guys like this video, and you post me a lot of comments asking questions about a lot of this stuff, because I'd be more than happy to answer some questions for you guys. I'd love to hear from you about suggestions for future videos and stuff like that, and I hopefully we'll get to answer some responses from you guys soon. See y'all in the next video. Bye.